Hey you guys, and welcome to my channel, or welcome back if you are returning. I'm going to be answering your most common questions about SATS, or imagining in the state akin to sleep. And I'm going to be taking the most common questions that you have asked and that I have received so that you have the best understanding possible. So if manifestation and conscious creation are topics that you are interested in learning more about, then definitely don't forget to subscribe to my channel. And if you enjoy this content and want to see more, don't forget to hit that thumbs up button. If you're interested in any of my resources, such as one-on-one coaching, my courses, or my new group coaching program, I've got links to all of that down in the description box below, so don't forget to check it out. Also important to note, if you want to skip ahead to a certain section or question, I've got that time-stamped down below. And I wanted to start with this one because SATS is a topic that is very well known, but has almost received some controversy in the last handful of months. This was a technique that was referred to by Neville Goddard over and over again. Neville Goddard talked about this technique constantly, and for good reason. But I don't see as many people talking about it anymore in recent weeks and months, and I don't understand quite why that is. And I think in part this is because for most people, SATS is not something that comes most naturally and effortlessly. Visualizing in the state akin to sleep can be somewhat of a struggle for many people, and I think that it can get discouraging, and maybe they try it a couple times, but out of frustration or because they don't have the right understanding, they just kind of toss this one aside, which is really sad to see because this is a powerful technique. This is one that I use if there's anything specific that I want, because with this, I know I'm going to get it, and it shows up fast. There is a reason that Neville Goddard banged on and on and on about SATS. So I felt encouraged to begin this series with the topic of SATS, or imagining in the state akin to sleep, in hopes that by answering a few of the most common questions that I get, and by clearing a few things up for you guys, you might feel more inspired to take this up yourself and see what great lengths this can take you. Because one thing that I can promise you is that once you are able to do this, it could take you farther than you ever thought possible. Now, for those who might be brand new and don't know what SATS are, SATS is an acronym that is short for imagining in the state akin to sleep. And it's essentially an act of visualizing that desire or that state of the wish fulfilled when we are in a groggy, semi-induced sleep state. And I've made a video talking all about SATS in great detail, so if you want to get some breakdowns of instructions on how to do it and how to apply it, I can link that video up here and also down in the description box below. But without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into the questions. Question number one that I get is, how do I keep myself from falling asleep too soon? And for this, the short answer is practice. And I'm going to emphasize that in this video quite a few times because it needs to be reiterated. Imagining in the state akin to sleep for most people is not something that comes very naturally to us because it's not something that we have done. Just like with learning and acquiring any new skill, there's going to be a bit of practice that's needed initially in order to get the hang of it. So it is very likely and very common that the first handful of tries, maybe even the first several tries, you fall asleep too soon, or you drop off before you have a chance to really get yourself into it. So the short answer is practice, and knowing that this is something that typically occurs and is very common, especially when it's just something that we're getting into. But like with anything else, the more we practice, the better and better that we're going to get at suspending ourselves in that groggy state without dropping off completely. Now that said, there are a few tips that I can give you guys to help you combat this and make it easier for you. Number one is to readjust how you are sitting or laying so that you are not too comfortable. One of the biggest ways that we are susceptible to this is because we get ourselves so cozy that we're out like a light. Now, we don't want to sit or lay uncomfortably, but we want to maybe adjust around so that we're not going to be as likely to succumb to this. So for example, if you are a side sleeper, if you typically sleep on your side, try doing SATS laying flat on your back, something that you're not really used to or something that you're not in the habit of falling asleep in. Or you can do this sitting upright instead of lying down. So getting yourself in a comfortable chair or in an upright position instead of lying down, where you are going to be a bit more susceptible to falling asleep. The second tip to address this is to try doing SATS earlier in the day or earlier in the evening. One of the things that a lot of us are guilty of doing is waiting until we are already dead ass tired to try to do this. Of course, it's going to go without saying that at the end of the day, when we're already exhausted after a long day, we're going to be out a lot faster. So instead of crawling into bed at midnight or 1 a.m. after a long day, try to do SATS earlier. That could be getting ready and going to bed an hour before you usually do. This can also be that you do this earlier in the afternoon or even early evening, perhaps on a lunch break. If you're somebody who works from home or works remotely, you can take that lunch break to even spend a few minutes of just practicing getting into that meditative state. But getting into the habit of trying this before we get too tired and we know we're going to be out like a light is key. And this is actually going to segue right into my next question, which is, do I need to take this scene into sleep with me? Do I need to fall asleep, like actually fall asleep in that state of the wish fulfilled? And that answer is no. We don't have to fall asleep. It is just as effective to do this earlier in the day when we are in meditation. And that's another thing that a lot of people are mistaken to believe, is that we need to do this right before bed or it's not going to work. And that is just not true. We can absolutely do this, and it is just as successful if we do this earlier in the day and just do it in a state of deep meditation. And then once that seed feels planted, or once we feel that sense of satisfaction or that session feels done, we can go ahead and get ourselves up and go about our day. Question number 3, how many times do I need to loop my scene? And that answer is, it varies. It varies wildly. It depends on what you are trying to do. It depends on how much practice you have had with this. It can be a few times, a couple of times. It can be several times. But if looping a scene, we want to do it until it begins to take on, as Neville described it, the tones of reality, or until we sort of get that satisfaction and really start to feel ourselves in that scene. Now, that said, and this is also important to note, you don't have to loop your scene. Yes, you heard that right. So the way that most people teach SATS is that you need to construct a short 5 to 7 second scene that implies your wish fulfilled. So something that is quick, short, and to the point. And then we take that short scene and we loop it and we play it over in our mind like it's on a feedback loop until we begin to actually start to feel ourselves in that scene. However, what I want to note is that for many people, this does not feel natural to them. And this is where people get stuck, because the scene that they may have doesn't loop very easily, or perhaps it's something that just feels very forced or jerky. If that's the case for you, then you can absolutely instead imagine a longer drawn out scene. There is nothing wrong with doing this. You can imagine a 5-minute scene if that is something that comes more naturally to you. But the key here is the sense of naturalness. The key here is that we want it to be something that does not feel forced or agitated, or something that is going to take a whole lot of willpower to achieve. For some people, it's going to be more helpful to loop a short scene to keep them from wandering or keep their mind on track. And for others, imagining a longer scene is going to feel like it flows better. Neither way is right or wrong. It is what comes naturally to you. So if looping a scene is causing you to get stuck or it feels very forced, then try instead to imagine a longer scene. There is no right or wrong way to do this. At the end of the day, it's all about the feeling of it. Question number 4 is, how many times or how many nights in a row do I need to do SATS before I can drop it? And once again, that answer is, it's going to depend. I'm not able to give an exact number to everybody watching this, but I will say that there's going to be a number of factors that is going to make this variable. So with that said, we want to continue to imagine until it feels like it's done. And basically what that means is you're going to naturally get that feeling of fullness or satisfaction of it, and you're naturally going to get the sense to drop it. And again, this is something that comes naturally. It's almost like eating a giant meal. And after we've been filled, we have that sense of, I'm satisfied, I don't need to eat anymore, I'm good. But you'll know it's been impressed because you won't feel that strong urge to need to keep doing it. If you find yourself feeling like it's not done yet, or that you haven't impressed it yet, or anything that implies you need to keep going, then I would keep going. Question number 5, I can't visualize or I can't see this picture clearly. Is this going to affect the outcome? Short answer is no, absolutely not. And this is important. I think a lot of people are mistaken in thinking that their scene needs to be like ultra high def in 8K resolution, crystal clear, vivid as hell, or that it's not going to work. And I think this is because people who talk about SATS and people who do it often describe how visual and visceral the scene is. And I know I am certainly guilty of doing this, and so is Neville. That said, this does not need to be the case at all. As long as you have an outline or an idea of what's happening, that's all that is required. Your scene may be blurry, it might be dark, it might be hard to make out what's going on, and that's totally normal. Again, this comes down to how much you practiced. When I first started visualizing, I absolutely sucked at this. I couldn't see anything. I could not get a clear picture to save my life. It was not until through practice that I got to the point where I can visualize a very vivid and distinct picture. And I do encourage everybody to practice, because this is a muscle that you absolutely want to strengthen, but it does not have to be a ultra high definition scene in order for it to manifest or to impress subconsciously. As long as you have the general idea of what's going on, you're good to go. Question number 6, how do I get rid of intrusive thoughts when trying to do SATS? And this is a really important one because I know I certainly struggled with this too. And once again, this is going to get better and better with practice and with some mental discipline. There is some discipline of the mind needed for SATS, but that discipline is going to reward you with riches beyond your freaking wildest dreams. But one of the big recommendations that I have, if this is something that you are dealing with, is to practice outside of your SATS once a day with something like a focused attention meditation, or even just taking some time out of your day to keep your focus on something like the physical sensation of your breath. And every time that your mind starts to wander, you're just going to gently guide it back. And you're going to gently redirect as many times as you need until eventually it's going to become easier and easier. And the same thing goes for when we're in SATS. If you find that you're trying to get into your scene, but something intrusive pops in there, just bring your attention to something like the physical sensation of your breath, or something that you can cut to sort of redirect your mind. This is all about learning how to redirect, and it will come easier and easier. And another reason that this happens is when we try to jump into our SAT scenes too quickly. This is why I recommend counting down from 50 at minimum, or arguably even 100. And I go into more detail in that video about how to do SATS, but essentially when you start, you want to take some deep breaths to start getting yourself relaxed. And after several deep breaths, you want to start counting down. And what I always do is count down from 100. At the very least, I would recommend counting down from 50, because what this is going to do is to help you not jump into SATS when you're still too alert and too conscious, because this is when we are most susceptible to these intrusive thoughts and these negative thoughts. When you are more deeply relaxed, this is much less likely to happen. So make sure that you are counting down, make sure you're giving yourself enough time, and if this is still something that's bothering you, practice something in your day like a focused attention meditation to help discipline that redirection muscle. Question number 7, do I need to imagine from first person or can I imagine from third? And this is an incredibly common question, and I understand that for most of us, it comes so much easier to imagine from third person. But I'm going to discourage you guys from doing this, and here's why. Imagining from first person is going to help you to capture this scene much, much, much better. The whole idea of doing SATS is to put ourselves in that imaginal scene as if we were living it in reality, in the 3D world. And we are all naturally living this life and living in this world through first person. We're not seeing our life from watching us on the outside. And there are different exercises that you can do to practice this, but I'm going to strongly encourage everybody to start to get in the habit of imagining from the first person perspective. And I'm going to try to give you guys a picture of why it's a good idea to do this. All right? Let's say that you're sitting at a table drinking a cup of coffee. Now, from the first person perspective, you can actually see that mug, but also feel it as you pick it up. You can feel the warmth of that coffee cup as you go to pick it up to drink it. You can smell the aromas, you can smell the hints, you can smell the flavors as you begin to bring it up to your mouth. You can taste the bitterness, you can taste the strong notes and aromas as you take a sip of it. Notice how engaged you are when doing this from first person. Now I want you to imagine or think about that same scene, but instead you are watching yourself do it in third person. In that case, you're just watching yourself drink a cup of coffee. Notice the difference in how engaged you are with your senses. Notice how from first person you are engaging all of your senses, whereas in third person is just seeing it. You're just seeing that picture. So imagining from first person is going to greatly help you capture all those senses and give you a more lifelike picture that helps you to feel more in that scene, like you are actually living this experience that you're imagining. So yes, I understand that this might take a little bit of practice to really begin to train your mind to go from third person to first person, but it is well worth it to do so. And the last question I have for today, question 8, what do I do if I'm stuck on a scene? Or what if I can't think of what to visualize? And this one also is extremely common. Sometimes we get stuck as to what the hell we should see or do in this imaginal act. And this is why I always encourage people to try to draw up an outline beforehand, or try to get an idea of what the scene might look like before lying down to do SATS. If you have a general idea or outline beforehand, it is going to construct and unfold naturally for you, versus if you're just trying to figure it out on the fly. That said, I do have a tip for you if this is something you're struggling with. If you find it hard to come up with a scene of you living in the end, one method that you can always fall back on is imaginal conversations. And that's essentially where you are imagining yourself and a close friend or family member having a conversation about your wish fulfilled from the place of already having it. This usually comes in the form of a congratulations scene, where essentially you just want to hear the other person congratulate you for obtaining or getting the thing that you want. So if that is engagement or marriage to SP, you imagine a conversation with you and this other person where you hear them say, "Oh my goodness, I'm so excited for you, congrats on your engagement." You're going to instead just construct a scene that is you and another person talking and hearing them congratulate you and hearing yourself respond by confirming it. So for example, let's say that you want to get married to a specific person. One idea for the scene can be that you and a close friend are having a conversation and you are hearing your friend tell you something like, "Oh my God, Missy, that wedding was beautiful. You and SP looked amazing. I have never seen two people that look so much in love." And you would respond back by saying, "Oh my God, thank you. Yes, it was amazing. It was the most beautiful night of my life and I'll never forget it." And that alone is confirmation of your wish fulfilled. It does not have to be some elaborate wedding scene with you and your person. Though it can be, if that's what you want, it doesn't have to be. And in fact, for most people, for a lot of people, it can actually feel much more natural having a conversation with somebody else and confirming that wish fulfilled versus seeing it with themselves and their person. Or it may be easier to hear somebody congratulate you for a successful business venture or obtaining a lot of money versus trying to figure out how you're going to get said money. Because again, that's messing with the how, and that's not our job. So if you are struggling with how to outline or how to figure out what a good scene would be, try using an imaginal conversation instead. You can use them for any scenario, any outcome. It always works. And it has always been a favorite of mine and a personal go-to of mine. So I definitely strongly recommend this one as well. And the last thing that I had to note before I end this video was that we don't have to do SATS to manifest. If that is a fear that perhaps you have had, that we need to be perfect at this or we need to do it just right in order for manifest, that's not true. SATS, just like any other technique, is just that. It is just a tool to help you naturally bridge that gap from where you might be currently to where you ultimately want to be. Nothing more, nothing less. But on that note, I do want to encourage everybody to try this one if you haven't yet, or maybe revisit it if it's something that you tried and dismissed before. There is a lot of power behind this technique, and again, there is a reason that Neville was adamant about this one, because it works. Just like with anything in life, it might take some practice, it might take some getting used to, it might take several nights of trial and error. But what is several nights of trial and error when we're talking about the rest of your life and the ability to radically change your life in the most amazing ways possible? If you start to look at it from that perspective, it really does seem a no-brainer. If nothing else, we definitely want to make sure that we are minding that time before bed when we are drifting off into sleep. That is a powerful moment, because in that moment, you are taking whatever feeling and whatever you are doing into the subconscious mind. At the very least, we want to learn to at least capture that feeling before sleep. This may not come super easy at first, but I can promise you it is well worth it. Because once you can sustain any disbelief and get yourself to that place where you are filled with the satisfaction of your desired outcome, once you do that, you are golden. You are set. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you found it helpful. If you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. And if you have a question about SATS that did not get covered, definitely make sure to leave it down in the comment section below. And if you're interested in any of my resources, such as one-on-one coaching, my blog, my social channels, my podcast, my coaching programs, all of that good stuff, I've got it down in the description box. So don't forget to check that out. Also, don't forget to check out the other videos on this channel. Don't forget to check out my Manifestation Fundamentals playlist. Each video is a different topic, but it all pertains in how to manifest the best life ever. So until we meet again, you guys, as always, take care, be well, and never forget how powerful you truly are. Happy manifesting, guys.